Hello and welcome to Careerpath Conversations with Spotlight Resumes. I'm Tava and let's kick things off.
Okay, hello everybody who's watching our Career Path Conversations video. I'm really excited to kick this off with Peter Oslin, who is the Director of Production at Hammerstein Ballroom, I should say the Manhattan Center. And thanks for giving us some of your time today. I would love to kick things off with just a broad overview of what you do. What does your job entail?
As director of production for the Manhattan Center, we are two venues, two recording studios, two television studios. And I am in charge of the two venues. We have a 3,500 capacity room and a 1,200 capacity room. And both of those rooms are fiber connected to both of our recording and TV studios. We do a wide range of events, from typical concerts to fashion shows to product launches to business meetings to trade shows, and even some private celebrations for the 1%. And every one of those types of events has certain specific production needs, but to summarize, it would be anything related to staging, sound, lights, safety, medical, pyro, backline, decor is something I would probably be dealing with in some capacity or another for all events. Oh, and television production, which I work hand in hand with the people that run the studios.
That sounds like a job for three people.
Some days it feels like that.
Yeah, you must have very long days.
Sometimes they are very long.
So, have you always wanted to be in a role like this? I mean, is this something when you were a kid that you thought, you know what, I want to be something, I want to be in a role that's around music or concerts or events? Or did you think you were going to be, a veterinarian? Or how did this come to be for you?
Well, I always wanted to be around music, and I was a musician, and I had some success as a musician, but it certainly wasn't going to pay the rent. And uh, I realized in the middle of my music career that I had an ear for doing sound, and so I was able to kind of develop that starting in small clubs in New York City, working with amateur and semi-professional bands, and then getting better and better at that until I was working with very well-known artists in big clubs and on tour and things like that. And as I was doing that sound engineering job, I was often asked to be a production manager or a tour manager. And you learn like a little bit of everything when you're on the road. And so I just was able to handle a lot of things. Some of the first tours I did, I would do 5 different positions because they couldn't afford to have 5 people do it. So you were the only one there. You had to do it. You had to figure it out, be organized. And that makes you a more efficient production manager. And it's easy when you're a production manager for a band to become a production manager at a venue because that's your counterpart. So you already know what the conversation is. You're just on the other side of the conversation now.
Okay, so is this a typical trajectory for someone in your line of work that they would sort of start out doing live sound and then into sort of working with bands directly and artists directly, or is it all over the lot?
I think a lot of people have different paths to this. I think in the music world, you've seen more audio people become production managers, but I think in the Broadway world, theatrical world, it's more lighting people that become the production managers. But that's not a hard and fast rule by any stretch. I think there's some people who just know how to like see a project from the top down and with a 360-degree view, and they're the kind of people that are really good at managing a team of people. And a team of people could be 5 people or it could be 200 people. And you sort of have to know how to conduct all of them and make it work in a safe environment, and under the right budgetary considerations, and and on time.
Understood. Yes, it takes a lot of higher order thinking and executive functioning to be able to pull off a role like this with so many moving parts.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious also to know in terms of the skill set that you use the most. I mean, I know there's a lot of multitasking, but what would you say is the one thing that you're good at that is really essential to do this job well?
I always relied on the audio part because I love doing it and I had an ear for it and it came to me easily. But really, my job, I think, is really about knowing how to manage a lot of different personalities, uh, and knowing how to articulate what needs to be done. So I can, if I have, let's just say, a team of 20 people working on a gig, I need to be able to tell each one of those 20 people what they need to do and give them a sort of time frame and how to do it. Uh, and we in a way we operate a little bit like the military. I would be the general, and then I would have my captains and colonels who would then see the smaller teams underneath that: the audio team, the lighting team, the pyro team, the staging team. But it's good lines of communication. It's knowing how to make all those parts work together.
Understood. So this next question, let me think about the best way to ask it. I think what I want to get at, if you had to pick one thing that prepared you most for your career, would it be your education, your network, or your experience? Which of those three has had the greatest impact on your career today?
I really think experience and network go hand in hand. If you, someone who's really good at their job but doesn't know anybody is never going to have anyone call them. Uh, and vice versa. You could know a lot of people, but if you're really not experienced, nobody's going to call you either. So you really need to kind of develop both hand in hand. Uh, in my business, almost everything is word of mouth. It's who you know. And that can be a really good thing, because if I recommend somebody for a job, the person who's asking me for the referral knows that I'm not going to send a bad person because my name is attached to this other person. So we tend to self-police really well. I'm not going to recommend a bad person who could mess up someone else's job. You don't want that on your reputation is everything. So yes, your network is absolutely essential. And if you're smart, you'll look at every event as a way to gain experience, because there's always going to be a curveball. There's always going to be something new to learn on every gig.
So true, and I think that that relates to a lot of industries as well. I'm curious to know what advice you would have for someone who wants to do a similar type of position.
I think there are several different paths to getting here and getting into the industry in general. You could be working at a local music venue in your town, just agreeing to be like a stagehand. That way you kind of learn how things work and you start meeting artists and other tech crew people, and you kind of that's one way you can get into the business. Certainly you could go to a tech school that teaches audio engineering and they may have a job placement program. Certainly you could be going to a college with a great theatrical program and they may also have a job placement service. You start at the bottom, but if you're paying attention and being a great employee, people will continue to call you for more work, and you will find your pay scale goes up as you become more in demand.
So, my next question really deals with, I think it's important to acknowledge that we're in a very unprecedented time, right? This is how does a global pandemic impact an industry that relies on large amounts of people gathering? Where do you see your industry headed, or are there pivots sort of being talked about? And are you excited about them, or is it kind of not what you signed up for?
It's a little bit of everything. It's not what I signed up for, but this is the hand I've been dealt, so I've got to figure it out. Certainly, we are equipped to do remote virtual productions. We've done them already. So I just think it's now honing in on those strengths that we already had and refining them. In medical safety is going to be a really important thing to consider from here on out. And so as a venue, we're now researching all the ways that we can bring people in safely and not create a new outbreak of coronavirus. So that takes a team to figure it out, from, how do we get the equipment in the building? How does it work? Where are we going to place it? How many people can we now put in a building? Because even though our legal capacity says this, but how can we operate safely now? It's going to be a reduction in capacity. These are all things that we need to discuss and think about and see how this works. And unless there's a vaccine, this research is really going to be important to continue moving forward.
Yeah,
so that's the hand that's been dealt me this year.
Yes, well, every industry is having to be very creative in terms of how they pivot and reshift and stay productive and continue to do what they do in ways that put safety first. So I just think there's a lot of extra challenges in your industry because it just relies on a lot of people having a shared experience in person for the most part. I guess also what I'm curious about too is we talk about the skills that you use on a day-to-day, and it seems like there's a lot of strategic planning, a lot of troubleshooting. Is there another area where you could see this skill set fitting? Like if you couldn't be a production manager, is there another role that you think, I'd be really great at this?
I think in general, we're good at project management. Because we have to think all the angles. Whereas specifically my job is staging, sound, lighting, electrical, backline, safety, pyro, fire codes. That applies to a lot of other situations as well. And just knowing, you're always learning. So some of these things do port over, I was supposed to, other project-driven environments. But I've not really thought about it, mostly because I like what I do, and I'm always just continually trying to refine what I do here. But organizational skills are never a minus in someone's career. You're always going to need those. They're always going to be helpful.
Right, that is true. That is true. Well, I want to be mindful of your time, but I also want to just give you a chance to see if you have any parting words or closing thoughts or anything you'd like to add that we haven't touched on about what it's like to do your current job or what it was like to get there, anything like that?
Well, if I was going to give advice to someone starting out, and this applies to any field anywhere, show up on time, be proactive, know that you're not going to know everything, so ask the questions at the right time, listen a lot, and you'll find that you've learned a lot. And all of a sudden you'll find out 5 years down the road, wow, I got good at this job and this is turning into a career. Be the person that everybody wants to rely on, because that means they want you around. That's why the phone rings for you.
Right. Well, I think that's very good advice for every field, right? We have to do the work, put in the time, cultivate a good reputation, and then as time goes by, suddenly you find that you're in a position to help others as well. So, and that's really the purpose of these conversations, is to demystify the process a little bit and just kind of get a sense of how people wind up in their careers. And
absolutely, to that point, there were people who took me under their wing when I was just starting out. I was noticed in a club by a very well-known sound engineer who'd been around the world a million times with the best acts in the world. And he saw that I was just there to work and there to be helpful and there to be a troubleshooter and a problem solver and to be reliable. And some of my very first pro gigs on the road came through this guy. And so I've sort of taken that, and will help younger people coming. If they come to me asking for help, of course, I'm going to help them out. I want them to do the right thing. I'd rather they be trained by me because I know they'll learn to do things safely and responsibly.
So there's really no shortcuts. Do the work, and eventually it'll be seen by the right people. And it does seem like in your industry, there's very much a sense of people take each other under their wing. So it's important to be out there and to form those connections.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, Peter, I thank you very much for your time. It's been nice chatting with you about your career. And cheers.
Cheers. Thank you for having me.